So if I could ask my first guests, if I could ask Sultan and Antonia and Sunny to join me on stage. So our first session is aptly entitled Before and After the Beginning, with very special guests, Antonia Carver, Sunny Rahbar, and Sultan Sooud Al-Qassemi. Now, in David Lynch's Dune, a film he made back in 1984, of course, based on the great sci-fi novel by Frank Herbert, a character, Princess Irulan, says, quote, "A beginning is a very delicate time." Last year, I had the pleasure of curating the 20th anniversary show at the Third Line Gallery, where I said, quote, "These 20 years measure the distance from a time when art from or about the Middle East had yet to fully reach museums and auction houses the way it has today," end quote. In Sunny and Claudia's amazing gallery, I laid out a timeline that included wars and revolutions, revolutions in technology, astronomical discoveries, viral lockdowns, lamentations, and also, importantly, labubus. Do you remember labubus? Every crisis is a collapsed narrative. Every ending is also a new beginning. I landed in Dubai for the first time in December 2005 in the bright shadow of 9/11 and the war on Iraq. I was seduced by the gigantic billboards in the desert and the spirit of everyone here laser-focused on building something, anything, everything together. I met a number of people, and some of them are sitting on this stage right now, and some of them are sitting in the audience with you and amongst you, who all went on to profoundly shape the arts and culture landscape in ways that remain thoughtful, generous, catalyzing, and also, importantly, ongoing. What I wanted to do in my exhibition last year at the Third Line is what I want to do now in conversation with my dear guests. I want to dispel the notion that what we see today, endless biennials, museums, fairs, and curated dinner experiences, the notion that these came from nowhere, or worse still, have been airlifted in by the benevolence of Western brands. So, what was, and importantly, wasn't there before and after the beginning? And just how many beginnings were there? And with that, will you please join in welcoming Antonia Carver, Sunny Rahbar, and Sultan Sooud Al-Qassemi. Hi, everyone.
Hi. Hello.
Hi. When was the last time all three of you were on a stage together?
Ooh.
It's been a while.
It's been a while.
It's been a while.
We've had various combinations of two of us.
Yes.
But not all three of us together.
Thank you for bringing us back together.
Yeah.
Reunion.
This is what it's all
Old
about.
school reunion, like a high school reunion.
Yeah, the band is back. Even if you're very far away over there.
Very, very far away.
Yeah.
I was just telling Sultan, Sunny, we were on a session together in 2008 in Abu Dhabi with her dad. And I think that was one of the first times I got to meet you in Abu Dhabi.
Okay.
Yeah. So Sultan, let me start. Let's go right at the beginning. Sultan, tell us where you were born and what was the UAE like growing up? And also, were you exposed to Sharjah's we now know Sharjah to have a very long and extremely rich history of arts and culture. Was this something you were exposed to early on?
Thank you, Shumon. I was born on January 1st, 1978 at the Kuwaiti hospital in Sharjah. And I grew up in a city that was, and still is, of course, very vibrant. I remember going to Shakespeare plays in the Africa Hall in Sharjah. I remember going to the Expo Center where they used to have the book fair. And I remember going to various performances. So it was quite vibrant for me as a young man. But I also remember going to Ajman and to Dubai. It was very easy, there was less traffic. That was a great advantage.
Many people in the West would have assumed that you got around on camel.
That's what people in my university in France thought. So yes, it was very vibrant. We're very lucky. There were books, there were performances, there was all these our school. I remember having a German kid with me in school, a Pakistani kid, and an Indian kid, Egyptians. So it was a very international environment for me. Even then, in the 1980s and 90s, I went to Catholic school in the very beginning.
Catholic school.
Yes. We won't talk about that.
Okay.
So.
Or we should talk about it.
So, but I do want to say one thing though. I do want to say that I'm doing research for this paper I'm writing for my master's, and I just discovered today that there was an exhibition in Dubai in 1965 at the Dubai Public Library, and I've never known about this. I've never known that there were exhibitions 60s, 70s, and I think this goes to your point that this didn't come out of nowhere. That you have. I think we're entering now into the third generation of cultural production in the UAE, and I think this is something important to keep in mind.
What would you say are those first two then, if this is the third?
I mean, the first two are people who experienced the 1960s and 70s, right? Where you had even as early as the 1950s, you had the radio that was being broadcast, whether it was from Cairo or from Kuwait. You had Kuwait television that set up here in Dubai in 1969. You have the newspapers that were founded. You have the libraries. You have the schools. You have some festivals that took place here, and it was a very vibrant environment, even in the 60s and 70s. And then you have the second generation that experienced the 80s, 90s, and the turn of the century. So there are people, I mean, who've seen so much here in the UAE, and we have to dispel this idea that everything is, everything happened after the year 2000 in the UAE.
Antonio, so tell us what brought you to Dubai in the first place. When was this, and what were your first impressions of the place when you got here?
Oh, wow. Well, I moved here in 2001, and I guess a lot of it was just to do with kind of curiosity, but also trying to identify. Even then, I think we were starting to talk about Dubai as a kind of hub, right? So I'd been working with Iranian filmmakers and artists and also others from Lebanon on film festivals and things like that. So I kind of thought, right, if I'm in Dubai, I can do these little forays here and there. And my husband's a journalist as well, and Media City had just opened up. So all the media industry was also moving from other places to Dubai. So, but I mean, very different. I was working at Fiden Books at the time in London, and I remember saying to everybody, I'm moving to Dubai. And they were like, what? Why? Where? So this kind of level of ignorance about the Gulf at that time, that's one of the things that's obviously dramatically kind of changed. But yeah, I mean, I think one of the amazing things about working here all that time is just that every single day you learn something and you're shaken out of things. So it's about learning and unlearning every single day, and that continues, right now amongst all of us too. So I think that's something. And going back to what Sultan was saying, when I first moved here, we set up Bidoon together, and I was working at Time Out and reporting for the Art newspaper and Screen International. So it's kind of thinking about the Middle East and how to, for want of a better term, and how to kind of project that to other places. But, this kind of idea that everything began suddenly. I mean, I remember being invited to lots of things to do with theatre, poetry, and when we came to get more and more involved in contemporary arts, I think that people coming from other disciplines, or that kind of deep-seated understanding of geopolitics, literature, poetry, theatre, all of that came in to the kind of ways in which contemporary art grew. And I think that's really important to recognise that these things aren't siloed one to another.
And we're going to get into into Bidoon in a minute. Sunny, a little bit of biography from you as well now. Your family moved here 1980?
1980.
1980. But I think importantly, you were in New York when 9/11 happened.
Yes.
Soon after, you came back, and together with your friend Lisa Farjam, you founded a new magazine called Bidoon.
Yes.
Could you tell us how your experience in 9/11 America acted as a prompt for Bidoon? And why did Dubai at that time, 2003, 2004, feel like the right kind of laboratory for this new publishing experience?
Yeah, so I grew up in Dubai and then moved, I went to New York to study. And the whole time I was in New York, I was wondering why I wasn't seeing so many Arab artists, Middle Eastern artists, any other artists from this part of the world that I lived in. But then, I just thought, well, where are they? I was curious. And I started to meet one or two artists here and there, and then I met others. And then 9/11 happened. I was in New York. I was working at the time at a gallery. And I remember, like, very quickly, there was a shift in people's, attitudes towards the Middle East, Arabs, Muslims. We were all, I don't know, terrorists, and we all had attacked them, and we were the bad people now. And it was so bad that even, I had friends, Iranian friends, Arab friends, who were really worried. If they had beards, they were shaving them. If they, they were wearing like this American flag on their shirts because they wanted to look as if. So in that moment, I think everything crystallized, and I realized that I think the problem is that they don't know that much about this part of the world, and they have no understanding. And for me, it suddenly was very clear that that they had to know about us, and how could they know about us best but through art, artists, filmmakers, and so it didn't happen right in that very moment. But my friend Lisa Farjam, who was also living in New York and studying there, and she was studying at Bard, and she was, writing a book, and so she was more, let's say, a writer, and I didn't know what I wanted to be then. I was still 21, still young, but had a lot of fire, and so I came back to Dubai, and because my mother said, that's it, you have to leave America now. It's not safe for you to be here. You have to come back to Dubai. So this is 2001, and I realized I was in a different Dubai that I had been, because I was gone for 7 years, and I was just there was such a great energy, and it was exciting, and there was things happening, and new people, and because, the city had grown, the whole region had really grown. There was the Emirates Towers, there was just an energy of excitement and new beginnings, and also many people were coming to Dubai from the rest of the Arab world. I mean, there was a lot of Iranians living here, from the Middle East, Iranians living here, a lot of Lebanese people were living here, Palestinians, Jordanians. So Dubai itself had become a hub, a place where people could come and begin a life and live and do new things. So at the time, I was reading this article in the Gulf News, and they were referring to the Kuwaiti Bidoons, and they wrote something Bidoons, and then in brackets it said stateless, and I thought that's such a great name for this our generation, because I grew up. I'm from Iran originally, but my parents came here when I was 3, and Dubai is my home, and like you said, Sultan, I mean, you're always surrounded by people from many different nationalities and cultures, and it was never, ever something you even thought about, because it was just, Dubai was that. I mean, it is still that. The UAE is still that. And so I thought, Bidoon, what a great name for a magazine that will talk about art and culture from this part of the world, but also artists in the diaspora. And, I'll be here, and Lisa will be in New York. And, I had no idea how to run a magazine at all, which is why Antonia, came in and actually, they did everything with regards to the running of the magazine. But I was very excited because I thought a magazine is something that can be distributed far and wide. So even if we're here and people don't come here, they'll get this magazine in New York or in London or wherever, and then open. And likewise, they would get it in Cairo or Beirut or Damascus. And the idea was just to let people know our stories. Mm-hmm. So that was
perfect segue for Antonia. So Antonia, tell us, how do you get involved in Bidoon, and what were those first few issues like? And tell us also, I think importantly, we were discussing this, I think yesterday, who was bringing this together, personality-wise, profile-wise? So tell us about these first few years of Bidoon, please.
Well, I remember it really well because Sunny came into the Time Out offices where I was working. We just launched the first issues of Time Out Dubai, and you came in to see me. I remember it really well because it was you were one of the first people I met when I moved here. And he said, hey, we're going to set up this magazine and it's for everybody. But it had this kind of, which I think is actually a sort of defining thing that runs through a lot of these years, was this kind of defiance, but also a kind of joy and a kind of way of thinking, from the community itself. So this idea of bidun, I mean, obviously within the context of statelessness, it's a really problematic condition and term, but to reclaim it and say, okay, I remember that first. If we remember, the first issue was, maybe it's up here, it was called We Are You.
Yeah.
So this was this kind of like, this is how we want to be seen.
Yeah.
And that kind of subtext, I think Lisa's note was kind of, bidun is, us being, or the group being without country, without home, but without judgment. So this kind of like, this is incredibly inclusive. And then the Farsi meaning of it,
So
to know as well.
bidun
So
means
this kind
to know, but it also means without. So it's actually, it's not just the word that means stateless, exactly. So the idea was, who is this generation, our generation, and who are we? And we're like you, but we're not, we're not different from you. We're trying to, arrive, I suppose.
Completely. And then, and I think what's important to note about those years as well is also the kind of post 9/11 effect on the UAE academic scene as well, right? So, I mean, obviously UAU and Zayed at university had been around for many years, but the kind of American universities and that big sort of boom in university building was kind of late 90s, if I remember right, Sultan. So the first kind of graduating classes were early 2000s. And at the same time, obviously for young people from around the Arab world, particularly men, it was really difficult to study in the States or even travel at all, right? Because the visas kind of all shut down. So suddenly that was a massive boost to the scene as well. So you suddenly had a big opening up of number of students that were coming from other places to study here, but also then from the research that a lot of women going to university for the first time too, because these new universities and proliferation of higher education allowed women locally to study locally. So suddenly this huge, so I think those two things are crucially important because they kind of go hand in hand. And then what were we talking about? We're talking about bidun. There's a lot to pack into this session.
No, I know.
Anyway,
we can't do the whole bidun.
Yeah,
but maybe
sorry.
you can mention some of those key protagonists
Yes,
who were involved
exactly.
at the beginning,
Yeah.
because they've all gone on to have such like crazy luminous careers.
I mean, when I look back on it, absolutely incredible opportunity to work with these people. We were a pretty loose collective, and we were always joking. Every issue, the masthead was completely different. We all swapped places, and I'll be editor this, but no, I'll be this, I'll be that. We made up our own kind of job descriptions and titles as we went along. But Lisa was obviously an absolute kind of stalwart behind everything. Sunny, you went off to do Third Line, but remained connected with the magazine. So there were also all these kind of constellations out of the magazine and around the magazine. It started with the Bidun Nights as well, and the kind of collective that came out of that became 9714 and Misrepresents, and lots of other kinds of collectives, many of whom are still doing incredible things in Dubai today. Think of Sadia Zahid, Shahi Hamad, Shahab Hamad. I'm forgetting lots of other amazing people. Rad, Haider, anyway, many people. And then within Bidun itself, I worked really closely with Tirdad Zolgar. Negar Azimi came in a few issues in, and she's remained the editor to this day and really instrumental. Hassan Khan, you mentioned, and incredible working with artists who are also really rigorous critics and writers. I think we annoyed a lot of people. I mean, I was the kind of old person in my 30s. Everyone else was in their 20s, and we would just wrote fiercely and, about everything. But we kind of, I think that sort of irreverence, choosing to find joy and defiance in things was very much part of the magazine. And then out of that spun the kind of Bidun projects. We worked out of Shelter.
About that
So I think I've probably forgotten. I should mention Alia Al-Sabi as well, who was with me here in Dubai.
Yeah, many people.
There are too many. I've forgotten.
I know, it's fine. But Sultan, do you remember the first time you saw Bidun magazine?
Yes, I remember picking up a copy when from the Farjam collection.
Oh, yeah.
They had the stack there, right? That's when I picked up a copy, and I've loved this magazine ever since. And I assign it to my students in class.
Really?
I have a couple of them here. I think they can.
Wow.
confirm. Yes.
Thank you.
Yes, we
Excellent.
assigned some of the texts, especially Nagar Azimi's texts.
Yes.
Yes.
She's
When you
excellent.
say,
Okay, so now let's move forward a couple of years. It's March 2007. The DIFC Gulf Art Fair is inaugurated, set up by Ben Floyd and John Martin. So too is the Global Art Forum, curated by Maria Finders. Quote, this is from the description of that very first edition. Central themes were artists and their work, the next 10 years of contemporary art, and the Middle East cities and culture. And sadly, Maria Finders was originally going to join us on this panel and would have made, I think, a huge difference and fill in the kind of prehistory, those kind of early years, but sadly couldn't join us this time. Hopefully we'll bring her back. Sultan, I wanted to ask you, at this time, March 2007, what stage were you at in your own art journey at this point? Had you already visited international art fairs? And did it feel significant that Dubai would now have its own fledgling international fair here?
So there was a number of things that were going on. I remember around 2005, 6, you start hearing talk of an art fair coming, but at the same time, you hear of auctions happening. And I remember there was a Christie's auction. I think this is their 20th anniversary. We have people from Christie's here. There was a Sotheby's auction, and there may even have been a Bonhams, I can't remember, but was there?
Yeah.
There was a Bonhams auction, and they were taking place all over the city, Emirates Towers, Royal Mirage, and I remember even Ayyam had started having their own auctions. It was a really, really exciting time. And there were collectors, there was this talk of this new space that was opening in Al Goz, and so it was the atmosphere was so electric and eclectic. You just felt like there was something in the air. I can't explain it to you. It's I'm sorry to all the young people here who didn't experience this, because it's a moment that you can't recreate. It's just you have to live through it, and this is why we have a bond between us that nobody will understand. We saw it, we smelt it, we felt it. We had tingles, we had these feelings. Do you remember how exciting it was?
Yeah.
I remember calling Claudia and saying I can't find you. Where are you?
Yeah.
I want to come and buy art from Third Line. Where are you? And her answer was, and I even called and I said, do you even exist? Where is this? And she said, well, I'm in my house and I have the artworks lined up on the ground.
Yeah.
And then I remember Mariha Tabari, and she had a space in
Fairmont.
in Fairmont.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You remember?
Yeah.
And so it was just this moment where people were still finding their way, and it all just came together. And this is the magic of Dubai. It just the pieces all, it looked like a puzzle that was all over the place, and it just seamlessly I don't know, blended, went in together, and it's now this beautiful mosaic that is Dubai.
And no consultants and no strategy plans that I ever saw, right? It was just kind of, we just fly by the,
happened.
Whatever
it just
happened.
happened. And you know somebody from the government, you call them up, you say, well, we need approvals, we need to, you remember? I remember one of the first fairs that happened here, I think the first Art Dubai, it was literally phone calls between the authorities and the galleries, asking them to give them exemptions to bring in the works for a short-term purposes, and the government was and continues to be so open to the idea, and they on the fly they were changing the rules. On the fly they were facilitating. This is something that never happened before in the Gulf, bringing in artworks for a week.
Totally.
What does that mean?
I don't know whether Layla's in the audience or Ben, but I think those are the two remaining members from Art Dubai 2007. But I'm sure, Sultan makes it sound super smooth, but you can imagine a scene where, I hope nobody from Art Dubai minds, but all the gallerists ready, the walls are all white, there's no art, because the crates are all waiting to be passed through customs. But they said, maybe in 3 weeks' time, and the fair starts tomorrow. So there's all this kind of, let's fly and see what happens. But I just wanted to mention one thing about 2003, which was really, really crucial as well, because it was the first time that Sheikh Al-Qassemi took over the Sharjah Biennale. So kind of 6 editions of Sharjah Biennale, but really the kind of first international one. So I think that definitely influenced massively Bidun, obviously, and everything that happened in 2003, but then also 2006 with the arrival of Christie's, and then 2007, which was the announcement of Saadiyat Island with all the architects. And so all these things were happening kind of concurrently.
Can I just say, yes, definitely Sheikh Ahour's arrival to the art scene here in the UAE was a huge step.
Absolutely pivotal.
But I want to go back to one small thing about the auction houses. Forget about buying and selling the art in the auction houses. The fact that they had printed the names of artists so that we can see how you spell Sliman Mansour. Once and for all, how do you spell the name of artists?
Yeah.
And what's their date of birth? Where did they study? There was this one-line biography, which you take for granted because you guys are young and you can just look it up on the internet. What's the big deal? I can find out anything. But the reality
We were like that
is
with the catalogue.
we had no idea if some artists were alive. Were they alive? How do you find them?
Yeah.
You know,
Totally.
how do you spell Fakhr al-Nisa? Is there a, you know?
No one knows, and still.
Because you
Yeah,
can spell it,
no one.
it can go really wrong. You know, so how do you spell some names, and how, you know, what do they look like? And so, and it was also the first time that Arab and Iranian art was put together.
Yeah.
Turkish was also there,
And South Asian too.
And
so
South
that was
Asian.
yeah. And I think just to pick up on what you were saying, Sultan. I mean, for me, that first auction, the Christie's one in 2006, was the first time that you really had Middle Eastern art as a kind of auction category, right?
Ever,
or even
yeah.
a kind of concept. So, you know, obviously all the cities, Beirut particularly, I guess, and Cairo had been incredibly strong in terms of art markets, but locally, but not seen as a kind of collective term. So I think that was such a massive kind of shift. And then to realise that Dubai is somewhere where, for the auction houses, I remember it would, because I was an art market reporter at that time, so, but the fact that Dubai could be a place where you can, you know, make a Middle Eastern market as they saw it, and they were seeing, okay, Dubai can be the new Hong Kong, and it can also be an international centre for South Asia, Turkey, Iran, and it was really South Asia that carried the sale, to be honest. But it was this from the NRI community, you know, buying, because it was already such a big tradition. But it just pivoted something, right? And then to have right on the back of that the International Design Forum, which we can maybe come on to, and then, you know, I went to the press conference in Saadiyat Island where they had Tado Ando and Jean Nouvel and Zaha Hadid, and I mean, it was just insane when I think about it. The room was smaller than this. I mean, we had no idea. And we're going to build Saadiyat Island and all these museums, and so these things kind of one after another. We were just riding along the wave. But suddenly you got a sense of history was being made, and you were lucky enough to kind of be living it.
And I want to ask Sunny, at Third Line, it's 2007. You've been open a couple of years at this point because you
2005.
opened 2005 towards the end of 2005. Although there's pre-activity before that kind of
That's what
proto
Sultan was
Third
referring
Line.
to, like at home or in construction sites. We did shows, yeah. Hotels.
Shopping malls, hotels.
No, I don't think we did a shopping mall. We did some hotels,
Yeah.
and then we did a construction site. We did a show
That was
in
great. Fast forward.
in Le Rêve. They had like just the 2 show apartments, so we did an exhibition there. Yeah.
So I want to ask you about the experience you and Claudia had here in the first, as I say, it was called the DIFC Gulf Art Fair.
Yeah.
It wasn't even called, like the Dubai hadn't sort of entered into the titling. And actually in the video that, one of the videos that Ted's done for Art Dubai, you talk about how important, and maybe we could talk about it in a minute. But Sunny, I wanted to ask you, what was that experience like in the first, this first iteration of the fair here? What were the conversations like? And did galleries, including yourself, actually sell anything?
Yeah. Well, we did sell. We had, I remember before they started, John and Ben came to the gallery and they said, we're thinking about starting a fair. And I was like, what? And then I said, but okay, I mean, why not? Great. And at that time, we were trying to get into other fairs because, international fairs, I don't know, Frieze that just started. And I thought, well, that's interesting. They said, yeah, a fair for galleries from this region, but also international art. And I said, yeah, great. And it's true because at that time already, the auction houses had started to do all their events. So it wasn't like completely, nothing was happening, but it was still a bit strange to think that there could be a fair in Dubai. But of course, we were like, yes, we want to participate. We want to be part of this this moment. We came to the fair and we were curious because we already by now knew who the collectors were. I mean, it was very small at the time. A very small. I mean, Dubai was also much smaller, and so there wasn't that many people that were necessarily collecting. And an art fair is about selling art. I mean, that's what it. I mean, and this, but really for a gallery, it's about selling art. So basically, we were just curious, like who's going to come? But they made a really big effort, and they really reached out. They brought a lot of museum groups. The fair has been doing that since the beginning, and it wasn't, and then they reached out to people in the community and made sure that everybody knew about it. And actually, I remember thinking, wow, I can't believe this happened. And I remember the talks that were on the beach at the time.
Yeah.
And I remember I went for the opening lunch or something, and I just couldn't believe it. There was all these people, and a lot of journalists had come in, writers from all over the world, and it really felt like, wow, we're in the beginning of witnessing something. But that's what I was thinking today on my way here. I was like, it's very rare that you can in your life say that I was at the beginning of, the beginning of where we are now. I mean, how can you even imagine that you can be at the beginning of anything in, like, if you lived in New York, or Paris, or so. It really felt that, when that fair happened, it gave us faith that it can continue and people will come. And I think that was really, for me, I mean, the conversations that we're having were about art. It's the same conversations we're having now about the booth, who is this artist. And people were very engaged. And I think I remember thinking, okay, we're here and this can happen. And the market was developing slowly, but it was there. So.
And now let me talk about the next few years, because I think they're very important for all of you. And just to continue with you a little bit, Sunny. So Third Line opens a satellite space in Souk Waqaf in Doha in 2009.
Yes.
Right? 16 years before Art Basel Qatar arrives.
16 years too soon.
16 years too soon.
That's what I said.
True visionary.
Yeah, I was
but not
really
a commercial visionary.
Yeah.
But the same year, you took part in Frieze London, 2009.
9 was our first year, yeah.
Meanwhile, the global financial crisis unfolds.
Yeah.
What was this period like?
Yeah, we were not expecting that. It was actually a crazy moment, because basically what had happened is there was this real estate boom in Dubai. I mean, we have to remember that was also the reason why a lot of people were in town, and it was crazy. I mean, we used to call it the Wild East, like it was like that moment where like things were happening and there was this people and art and sales, and I mean it was actually, I think, the best we've ever done, and in the entire history of the Third Line, like financially, was the first 4 years.
Well, it's been downhill.
Okay,
and then
it's a mic drop.
No, I mean, it really, and I was thinking about it, I was like, how? I mean, most of our artists were still very young at the time, so the price points were not even that high, but we were selling more.
But also rents were low, right? Mm-hmm. Rents were low.
Yes,
the city was very livable in those days, which I think helped a lot, fueled a lot of that.
No, I shouldn't say it. We continued to do, but it was a moment, 2009, and the financial crisis arrived a bit later.
Late here, right?
Here, yeah. So we were still kind of on that high of, the 2005 to 2007 years, and we had met Tariq Al Jada. He was is a collector from Doha, and he was building this new sort of space in Souk Waqif, the recently renovated Souk Waqif, which is really beautiful. And he's like, I have this little art center there, and why don't we open a Third Line together there? And I thought, well, that's super, interesting. We went to see it. Mataf was not even built. Everything was still under construction, and we thought, well, why not? It's so close, and so we did. We had the gallery there for a year and a half, but then when the financial crisis did eventually hit, it was a real moment of. I would say it was the first pause, because I think there's been some pauses, but that was the first pause in the moment of excitement. And that's why I always know that the UAE remains resilient, because we've already been in difficult, challenging moments, and you know, it comes back and it comes back and it, you know, it continues. So, but that one was specific to us. Suddenly the phone stopped ringing. I mean, you didn't even feel like you could pick up the phone and call someone and be like, "Hey, do you want to come see the show? We're selling some art." No, like, no. No, I was like, we've got to start selling something else, because you know, it was a real, and many galleries that had started opening closed, and many people started to leave, and so it was, you know, and then we were at Frieze London for the first time with Farhad Moshiri, which was, you know, at the time our most sought after artist, and, you know, a very important Iranian artist.
Could you share how much his works were going for at that time?
Yeah, so he
Public knowledge.
He was the first Middle Eastern artist, contemporary, to break the $1 million mark at auction, and it was here in Balnums. And I remember because we had a show at the gallery, and we were selling his works at that time for like $16,000 to $25,000. And I was sitting in this auction. Yeah, and I was at the Royal Mirage. Yeah, and we were sitting in Royal Mirage. They had this really beautiful, and by the way, the auctions then here were the best auctions we've ever been. I mean, like, Christie's had like this huge hall. I mean, there was like 400 people and champagne and people. It was just like
dressed.
I dressed up, yeah, like dressed, you know.
I remember at the time Christie's couldn't believe it, because I was reporting, and Jussi Pilkinen did the first auction, and before I interviewed him before, and he said, "Yeah, expectations are low. Might, you know, maybe a little bit like Hong Kong. Will anyone come? I don't know." And then I interviewed him afterwards. He's like, "What was that?" You know, the whole city was here. Everybody was dressed to the nines. Everybody was kind of getting in the action. There were probably like 20 people bidding and 200 people spectating,
watching.
But it gave the whole room this kind of real kind of energy that was really interesting, and that was very much part of the fair as well. Right?
People flew in from abroad to attend, just to watch.
Yeah,
totally.
So when that Bonhams auction happened, it was also, I think it was after many of the. I mean, it was also one of the last big ones that had happened, and a lot of artists were breaking records. I mean, you know, before that. The Egyptian
Mahmoud Saeed
also, I mean, yeah. So it was real. This is the thing that, so yeah, well, you know, coming back to your question, Farhad sold for $1 million at that auction. A few years later, his prices had gone up, and at the 2009 Frieze Fair, we were selling him for $200,000, and we had 4 paintings. And I was thinking, how is this going to work? But, you know, it had to work, because we had to continue the work that we had started in Dubai. And thankfully, we did make some sales. So we were able to weather the few years after the financial crisis.
Difficult periods. Yeah. Sultan, the next year, 2010, is important, I think, in your own timeline. That, for me, that my the kind of going public of the financial crisis, for me, was marked here on January the 4th, 2010, when what was meant to be Burj Dubai opened as Burj Khalifa, right? And this is the year that the Barjeel Art Foundation opens, 2010. Please tell us, what was your ambition at the time, and what did those first few years of activity focus on, given what Sunny just described, you know, in terms of this like commercial fever had maybe, you know, momentarily come to a kind of pause.
I remember I was there at the inauguration of the Burj, and everybody. You walk into the lobby or the foyer of the Burj Dubai those days, and there was a store that sold these caps and T-shirts, memorabilia, souvenirs, and I never forgive myself for not buying one or two just as a collector's item. And then His Highness Sheikh Mohammed bin Rashid took a representative from Abu Dhabi government to unveil the plaque, and everybody was expecting, and as soon as it was unveiled, it was like a collective breath, and it was a beautiful moment, because it just, I don't know, it was just very special. Again, one of those things, you had to be there. So I had been collecting art for about 8 years, or maybe 6, 7 years before that, And I reached out to a couple of entities in Sharjah, and I said, well, and when I was sharing the artworks through BlackBerry Messenger, has anybody here used BlackBerry Messenger?
I still miss my BlackBerry.
Yes, I definitely prefer it to the new phones. So BlackBerry Messenger, you could share images. It was the first time ever that you could send pictures. And so a lot of friends were asking me, "Oh, that's a nice work you bought. Where can we see it?" And this phrase, "Where can we see it? Where can we see it?" And everybody was buying. Until then, am I right? Most people were buying for their homes.
Yes.
There weren't many public spaces yet. And so Sharjah government was very generous, and they gave us a space in Al-Qasba. There was a picture there that is from those days, and I remember the email I sent to I believe it was Sheikh Ahour. I said we have 40 artworks. We have 40.
How many do you have now?
Yeah.
2,200. We have 40 artworks. We'd love to show them. And so, it also took a bit of guts. It also took a bit of oomph. That I feel like there are some people who have it. I think of Ghaith Abdullah and Salim al-Suwaidi and some of these collectives in Abu Dhabi, Munir al-Sayegh. Some people have it, and I really want to encourage the youngsters here to keep that fire inside them. And so we did open in February 2010 was our first exhibition. March 2010, yes. And it was the same year of Mathaf. Mathaf opened in December.
That's it.
So we opened in March, and Mathaf opened in December. And it was the first time we show the collection. And we didn't even know you do a publication. We did these cards, brochures. And we still have some of these works in the collection, although the DNA of the collection is the same, but it's much more modern now. If you look at the pictures that are on display here, and you go visit the exhibition across the hall, they're vastly different. This is all contemporary, not these pictures, but the contemporary photography works that are made by young artists. Here it's paintings by artists who are active in the 30s, 40s, 50s. So we learned a lot. There was a huge, a very steep learning curve. Yeah.
And actually, many other people here were also at your talk at Fikr on Sunday. And it was a reminder to me, we'll talk about your, the new building in a minute, but I feel like one of the things you've been so invested in is scholarship and thinking about legacy, thinking about giving due significance to the art that's been produced in the region. It isn't enough to just put it in your own building somewhere, however many people may see it. It's important for it to establish its own canon and also enter into other canons. And as you were saying, the first auction of Middle Eastern art. And now we've seen, various, I think now it's become very, very trendy in the rehangs of the Tate. From what I haven't been to LACMA now, but my understanding, that the sort of geography of what we consider to be the significant centers of cultural and artistic production expanded, but just in the last 20, 25 years. And I feel that one of the things that you've done very consistently, and also through your own teaching. So could you tell us something about why is it so important to you to cultivate scholarship, to cultivate the art history, to publish, to lecture, to teach? And how do all of these things come together in what you do?
First, I want to say that publishing is very expensive. and honestly, it takes a lot of time, it's exhausting, and the most terrifying thing is making a mistake. Making a mistake and putting it in a book is unforgivable. That you would think about it for a decade or more. to think of just one mistake, because then someone else picks up the book, and then you're building. You're actually, instead of benefiting the artist, you're doing the opposite. And but it's important. It's important to stake a claim. It's important to try your best. It's important to go through the archives, that some of which have not been seen. And I remember it's important to put an effort, right, in trying to find information about artists. And for that, I rely on my social media. So I always ask people, I say, does anyone know how to get in touch with this artist? Does anyone know how to get in touch with the family or the estate? We've published maybe 15 books or so, of which I'm super proud of a few of them. Some of them are, early days, but some of them are really incredible books. And I have to thank the director of the foundation, Suhaila Takash, who's here with us, who really is the motor, the engine behind the foundation. I always say she does the work, I take the credit. And also we have Rami Hums here, who's also the curator. And I'm very blessed to have an incredible team. Suhaila and I just finished working on a book on Inji Aflatun, who's one of the most important artists in the Arab world, and there was nothing about her in English. And there's so many other artists that we need to invest in. There are two ways to invest in a collection. Mm-hmm. You either buy the works, or you have art and then you invest in the art. Mm-hmm. So you invest in the art, you restore. You restore the work, you photograph it, you put it online, you publish a book about it. The value of the work automatically goes up. There are people who recognize Barjeel works here because they've seen them everywhere. Everybody knows the Barjeel painting of the man with the machine gun. Everybody knows the Barjeel painting of the white horses. I challenge. 8 out of 10 people know that painting. Why? It's because we keep showing it. People can't complain if you hide the painting in your house and you don't show it. You can't complain that nobody knows this art. So you have to keep showing it. I can go on forever and ever. But just one last plug is that we have a book launch tomorrow with my colleague Suhaila on a book we did on India. So we're trying not to only look to the West. We're trying to look at how artists from the region also exchanged culture, knowledge with the East. So we've done this exhibition in India. There's a book on India, but we still have to look at other countries. We've done Iran, but we still have to look at Pakistan. We have to look at Bangladesh, Sri Lanka. There's so much that we have not done. So it's exciting and expensive.
And we'll go on to it. Really expensive in a minute. Antonia, 2010 and 11 is important in your timeline as well, because you're approached by Ben Floyd to become director here at Art Dubai. Could you tell us how this was maybe a moment of recalibration, redirection, and what was it about this context, Dubai and the Gulf, that became an opportunity to make this fair unique and uniquely of this place and time?
Well, I'd already been a little bit involved with Art Dubai because Badoon was doing the projects and lots of other kind of things around the fair. So John and Ben asked us to do that from the 2007 to 2010 fairs anyway. And I think that...
And let's not forget the parties.
The parties were pretty important. So just going back to pivotal years, actually, I wanted to mention one thing also about 2003, just thinking about it, is just that, when the Sharjah Biennial opened that year, it was 2 weeks after America invaded Iraq. So just kind of thinking about moments of crisis and what happens in the kind of culture sector around that, and the way, you can see a response in a way. And, thinking of Biennale, Canvas was launched at that time as well, Badoon. And then fast forwarding... Brown Book as well, really important. And then 2009, when the Bin Shabibs launched Shelter. And so out of financial crisis also came this kind of sense of togetherness. And I know we were talking about auction houses and prices and everything, but thinking about galleries like the Third Line, I think what was really special is that places that could have been wholly commercial actually were, sort of fostering the scene. So Art Dubai, Third Line, you were doing everything that a commercial gallery doesn't do. Shelter, during that time, the Bin Shabibs just said, right, no one needs to pay any rent. That's where Badoon's office was. We're going to have a shelter dirham. this was the most fun, most communist thing that's ever happened in Dubai. Of kind of, we'll just all exchange different services with each other, and nobody pays anybody because nobody had any money. So there is certain kind of, I mean, it sounds romantic now, but it was a reality of how do you survive as a not-for-profit. And then that 2009 year was also the year when the first UAE pavilion, national pavilion of the UAE, was at the Venice Biennale. Now, if you look back, you think, wow, how ambitious and almost kind of audacious a move to be the first Gulf permanent pavilion in Venice. And Tirdad Zolgar also curated that, and Lamia Gargash was the artist, your artist, and and what did she choose to photograph? But one-star hotels in Dira. So got to think about this kind of very, counterintuitive, if you like, approach to what people expected from the UAE and the Gulf, and how that was kind of played with. So I know you asked me a completely different question, but with with
no, it's all relevant because I think this feeds into
so
how you begin to
what
approach
is the
the fair
possibility
here.
of a fair, right? And I think one of the really refreshing things was that, yes, all of us involved in Art Dubai, whether we were projects or galleries, and obviously led by Ben and John and Savita and Layla, the team, Zain is here as well. And, just, I think there was a sense of, okay, most of us, maybe not Ben Floyd, but most of us have been to fairs, and we've enjoyed them at times.
Worst kept secret.
Worst kept secret. But we knew how Frieze and Basel operated, right? But we also thought, what can you do from here? And how can you kind of really think from ground up? And I think that's what was really special. So even with the Badoon projects, we were really kind of... Frieze did a little bit of kind of let's let an artist kind of, play with the concept of commerce. But we just took that kind of idea and went on steroids. If you think of, 2010, John's last fair when we were projects, we commissioned Sophia Al-Maria to be a robot, sci-fi Wahhabi robot. We kind of commissioned Khalil Rabah, came up with this idea of an artist tour of the fair. He would carry collectors around in a sedan chair, and everybody was up for it, even though, you could write a thesis about the colonial, post-colonial overtones of this and the role of commerce and, all this kind of stuff. But it was a kind of collective, sense of irreverence and questioning and kind of really being right on our toes. Oh, that year also, Daniel Buzkoff, we commissioned him to do the world's fastest tour of Art Dubai, where people jogged around the fair. I mean, literally... kind of, playing with this idea of a speed tour of a fair and like, okay, let's tackle that. Let's laugh at ourselves. So I think this kind of idea of playfulness was really much part of the fair. So when Ben came and asked would I want to be director, I mean, ridiculous. I was editor of Badoon. I was nowhere. I mean, I did do art market stuff, but I wasn't, it was a huge leap in the dark. But I think that's kind of... It's defined maybe the history of the fair. It is sort of being ambitious, flying along and taking hold of opportunities and not always, sometimes just going with the gut rather than against kind of what would normally be done. And I think that's what kind of really grew a kind of community that was pretty resilient. We're still here today, and that really tried to think kind of from ground up. And I think one of the special things also that I saw so much opportunity in was education, right? So just in 2010, so before me, it was all there already. There was I found the catalogue recently, and there was a kind of, class and sort of internship scheme and exchange scheme. And I looked at the list, and you see there, Muna Al-Gurug, Sheikh Al-Mazrou. So these were people in 2010 that were doing educational programs in the fair who've now become stratospheric, right? And a kind of incredible artists running the museum's, division of Dubai culture. So it's that kind of capacity for a fair to become a model that grows, questions. You mentioned the Global Art Forum. And, lucky for us, I mean, we had some pretty robust discussions within the context of the fair, but we got the backing to say, let's do everything we can to build a scene and boost a scene beyond what a fair would normally do. And that became Campus Art Dubai projects. We had writing commissions, forums. I mean, we went a bit crazy. Now I look back on it. I mean, it kind of proliferated.
But even this came out of that.
Exactly, this came out of that.
It was like the most non-commercial commercial fair. But it was great. I mean, actually, we felt bad because we couldn't participate in all the other things. We actually had to try to sell some art.
And you, in 2010, you were a writer in residence or something in the Global Art Forum. I remember it with Naeem Mohiman, who's
Yes.
also one of your artists, and Haiga Vazian, who was working at the Third Line. So this kind of idea of you can put on a forum, but what if you also embed in it a writers group, writers in residence? So you put on the forum, then you question the forum of what the forum is trying to do. You know, we could go down many rabbit holes.
Well,
it was a lot of fun.
I would just say that I think a lot of what was happening at the time, I think you all reflect that, and many people in the audience do as well, was identifying what we felt was missing.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And I think the unique quality of a place like Dubai, let's say, in contrast to other places, is that it has been led through the kind of drive of entrepreneurial willfulness, right? And so the private sector, which, you know, in traditional dichotomies, you'd have like the public sector. And the public sector is there for like the public good. And then the private sector there is to make, you know, money, and then maybe through the process of philanthropy, let's say the American model, no, that you get that circulation, blah, blah, blah. But I think here, just as the nature, I think it's the nature of Dubai, I'm sure you'd agree, no? Where it really does foreground and promote entrepreneurship and the sense of like, do you want to do it? Can you do it? Then do it, no? And I think that, and for me, what was, so special, and the fact that I'm still doing this, no, after all these years, I mean, my first Global Art Forum was 2009, so it's the third one, is, you know, I can't imagine any other fair to have given, you know, me this kind of platform for so many years. But I think that is the nature of this place, where the commercial and the non-commercial, the public and the private, sort of like those terminological differences don't really matter as much as just, do you want to do it? No? Does it need to be done? And, you know, that's why, I don't know, for me, I mean, I did the show with Sunny last year because it was also my 20th anniversary. And I wanted to pay respect to that spirit, no? We are running out of time, but I want to make sure, does anybody, before I ask a few last questions of our guests, anybody have a question or anything they'd like to ask Sultan, Sunny, or Saudi, Antonia?
Saudi Antonia?
Saudi.
UAE Antonia.
Like, who's that?
Okay, then I just want to ask, do we have a microphone? Oh, many things. Abu Dhabi art. No, and this is the timeline is. It would take a very long time to go through every single part of it. But yes, I mean, I think a huge number, again, a visionary willfulness to create something from what seemed to feel like nothing, no? And this was happening all together at the same time. I just want to ask, I want to bring us up to the present moment and to peer into the future. Antonia, you just mentioned Venice. You've just come back from Venice. You've curated the Saudi Pavilion there with Dana Awatani as the artist. Could you tell us, you know, what it felt like? Again, you just said that UAE had its first Venice Pavilion back in 2009. How does that time distance feel from there to now, vis-a-vis the world stage of Venice and the role that, you know, Gulf, but also other MENA or SWANA kind of geographies play in that composition?
Wow, that's a whole another forum. But the Saudi and the UAE pavilions are next door to each other in Venice, and we had, you know, brilliant. Bana Katan did an incredible show in the UAE pavilion. If anybody can make it to Venice to be, I've just seen, there's Layla. Yeah, well, Layla can tell you all about it afterwards. It was an amazing show. But I think it's, and what was maybe special about this edition, they've all been incredible, obviously, but that the UAE pavilion was representing a range of nationalities who are all UAEans. So I think that was something that felt very sort of meaningful. With the Saudi Pavilion, with Dana Awatani, we did a project that's 29,000 sun-dried bricks that represent 23 sites from across the Arab world, very important heritage sites, all home to important mosaics that have all been damaged or destroyed over the past 15 years. And I think what was really, I guess, just, it's a bit too soon to sort of reflect on it, but I guess from our perspective, UAE and Saudi next door, as neighbours next door to each other, what felt important is that these two pavilions were really talking about what we feel is really matters right now. And that sometimes contrasts to other pavilions. Talk about naked people swinging in bells in Austria. And anyway, there's a whole other thing going on. But there's but it's just like, okay, how to reflect on, in the nature of this conversation, what has been the last 20 years of Art Dubai, and obviously, hundreds of years of art in the Emirates, is, for me, it's always about artists making work that talks about real stuff, which is important, right? You very rarely come across an artist in our world who's talking about, art, about the 1%, or reflecting on bodily fluids or whatever. It's usually most of the artists we know have something really important to say about reflecting on the here and now, which I feel, we're obviously incredibly biased because we're working here and this is what we do, but I feel in today's world, that kind of perspective of art really mattering, and the work that people make reflecting on the most important issues of our time is ever more kind of crucial. And, that felt in the context of Venice, actually, our pavilions are two next door to each other. I felt like we were representing also and reflecting back on the Biennale, in concert with the main exhibition, curated by Koyo Kuo, who's been a regular of, and should mention, she was instrumental in one of our key markers during my time here too, really pivotal figure. I felt there was a kind of synergy in thinking about what is our world and where are we going. So we're really super lucky to work with artists and thinkers who are so embedded in the here and now and thinking about the future. And that's not the same everywhere around the world. And that's whenever I visit other fairs apart from Art Dubai, I always get this sense of like, here's art about art. Yes, but it's not, it doesn't have the urgency of here. So I think that we're really privileged to work with people that are really so focused.
Thank you. Sunny, you've a number of artists in Venice this year. Basar, Carver, the Canadian Pavilion, Farah, the UAE Pavilion, Halil. So I think it's an important year for you. I just wanted to ask you briefly, we've just got a couple of minutes and I have to wrap this up, but, we did this 20th anniversary show with you last year. What is it, how did you reflect when we put all of that together, put it all on the wall? What did it make you think about the last 20 years? And what does it make you think about, moving forward to hopefully the next 20 years?
It made me feel like we came a long way in a very short time. Like you said, 20 years is 20 years in Dubai is 80 years somewhere else. Absolutely. I felt like because I didn't even remember everything. And then when I saw the show that you brilliantly put together, our 20-year anniversary, I was really, in a way, overwhelmed and impressed that we've all come so far, and not just us, but all of us and all the artists, and I really feel that we're at a new juncture, like a new beginning. Like there's this new 20 years, and so I have been reflecting, but I'm still thinking about what it will be. But it's interesting because 20 years ago, when we thought we were at the beginning, and we weren't, like you said, there was already people doing things here, and it's funny because now when I meet the younger generation who are amazing, they think that they're at the beginning, and I'm like, whoa, hello, what about? Wait, we were also here, So I'm like, but that's how it feels, that there is a new beginning.
There's always new beginnings.
Yeah, so I think so. This is another new beginning, and that's
Our beginning was the best beginning.
Just want to stop. We have some witnesses here to establish.
Every generation thinks that they're the first doing something, But I do think where we are now is going to be even. I think it's much more interesting because of all the groundwork that has been laid in the last 20 years. So I'm very excited, about what artists are going to be making and are making now, and what they'll make out of this moment, especially. But also, yeah, I think I hope I'm here for the next 40 years. So, because I think it just gets more and more interesting.
Fantastic. Sultan, you get to have the last word. I like you having the last word.
Oh.
But I want to ask you about something that is in process of becoming, which is the first standalone building for Barjeel Art Foundation. Can you tell us a little bit and give away as much or as little as you'd like to? But firstly, why have you decided that it's time now to build something standalone? And could you give us a sort of hint about, again, what are your sort of intentions and ambitions in terms of this long and storied history of Barjeel and where you want to take it next?
Thank you. So for the past 15 or 16 years or so, we've relied on a number of partners, including Art Dubai. Here you see a selection of the works across the whole, Sharjah Art Museum. I mean, there's so many entities that we relied on to share Concrete and Sarkal, where we did these temporary, sometimes medium-term exhibitions. And then the works ultimately go back into a warehouse. And that makes me very sad. And it makes the paintings very sad. And so everyone's sad. So how can we fix the sadness? The sadness can be rectified by having a permanent space. The fact is that we have these treasures from the region that need to be seen. And I've been sitting on this idea for the past dozen years or so. His Highness the ruler of Sharjah had given me a plot of land, and it's been with me literally in my drawer for more than a decade, and it's been there for so long that the shape of the land changed. New roads came in. It was a rectangle, it became a square, then it became another rectangle, and so finally we just decided to do it. And in collaboration with an Egyptian architect, I just drew something on a piece of paper and I gave it to him and I told him, turn this into a building. And it's a warehouse, guys. So, temper, moderate your expectations for architectural marvel. It's a space where you can just go see great art. And I think that's what we need. Architecture is important. You need beautiful buildings. We have the Jameel Center here, which is stunning. But I also think that our focus remains on a space where you can go and enjoy the artworks. And we think we can have at least 500 artworks on display. We think we can have 500 because it's 3,400 square meters. And we're going to be very, very meticulous with the hanging. And of course, I have again Sohaila Takesh and Rami Hams who are here, who sorry guys, we put a bit of pressure on them to make sure that there's as much work on display as possible while keeping it tasteful and classy and accessible.
Amazing. Okay, I'm going to put two things together now. Could we have the title slide for the next session? I'm just going to quickly introduce this because it connects, I think of this as back to back. So in 2016, we marked the 10th anniversary of Art Dubai and the Global Art Forum with an edition called The Future Was, co-directed by Amal Khalaf and Uzma Rizvi. We've often commissioned new works to debut in this context. There have been books such as autobiography and drone fiction, and I commission myself to make these cushions every year.
Merch.
And we've actually, for the very first time, over these years, they're so limited edition, there's usually just one of each, and there's 4. But we have remade special editions, and they're available next door in the DXB store. So it's your one and only chance to get these precious homeware items. So in 2016, we invited Qatari artist, writer, filmmaker, and part of the roster of Third Line, Sofia Al-Maria, to make a 2-part film called The Future Was Desert. The first part was debuted at the ICA in London, and the second here in Dubai. It's gone on to show worldwide and is currently at the New Museum Show in New York. Gulf Futurism was a term that Sofia co-coined with Kuwaiti musician Fatima Al-Qadiri. And fundamental to Gulf futurism's original law was the desert, a literal and conceptual landscape filled with deep pasts, deep futures, as well as deep oil and gas wells. Gulf futurism has gone on to become a meme, a swear word, an Orientalist fantasy, and something to vehemently disavow by the very people that invented it. In the spirit of Safia's early avatar, sci-fi Wahhabi, we are now going to time travel back to these two short films, they're 4 minutes each, which are wry reflections on how deserts are often cinematic shorthands for pre-modern civilizations. Deserts play key roles in regional incursions throughout the 20th and 21st centuries, and let's just never forget Desert Storm, for example. And also deserts sing at night, and they have known to swallow entire cities without warning. So before I ask the good gentleman at the back to dim the lights and play the films, I want us all to give a huge round of applause to Sultan, Sunny, and Antonia.
And to Shumon.
Thank you, Shumon.
Thank you, Shumon.
Yeah.
Thank you. Are we staying here?
Okay,
Yalla.
cinema time.